So even though Alabama has a bye week this week, that doesn't mean that there's a shortage of topics for us to dive into. In fact, today we need to discuss Alabama's insane recruiting class that Kalen DeBoer and this staff have assembled. We also need to talk about Alabama's pursuit for a flip for a wide receiver that you need to know about. On top of that, we need to talk about a wide receiver currently committed to Alabama who just took a visit elsewhere this weekend that's garnered headlines across the nation, forcing us to ask the question, is Caleb Cunningham on flip watch? Today, we aim to tackle it all. But before we can, as always, y'all know the drill. I have got to hear from you. Hop down to the comments, Y for yes, N for no, and let's start off with the first question. Is Caleb Cunningham on flip watch? Can't wait to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification as I do constant college football content. You don't want to miss any of it. And if you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and comment down below. And that's not just relegated for me, that's for any of your favorite creators. Those interactions seem small, but I promise you they are massive for content creators such as myself, in both getting picked up and maintained by the YouTube algorithm. But having said all of that, let's dive into it. And first, I want to discuss Alabama's recruiting class because it currently sits #1 in the nation per 24/7 Sports, and it is genuinely an insane recruiting class. If we just take a macro look at this, Alabama has 23 commits, 5 of which are 5 stars, 13 4 stars, the rest 3 stars. But when we dive further into the details, it's where it really tells the complete story. Alabama currently has 10 top 100 prospects committed in this class. They have 17 top 300 prospects and 2 top JUCO players. What Kalen DeBoer and this staff have been able to do on the recruiting trail has answered so many questions. Whenever Kalen DeBoer was hired, that was the chief question. Will he be able to recruit in the SEC? And ever since that question was asked, all he's done is answer the call. Alabama has assembled a class that I think many Tide fans can't wait to get on campus. Because when you look top to bottom, there's so many exciting players in this class. From a 5-star quarterback to a 5-star offensive lineman to 5-star defensive backs, great linebacker prospects, offensive linemen that excite everybody. I talked about a 5-star tackle. You also have a 5-star interior offensive lineman and a top 300 offensive tackle to boot. Plus, to kick it all off, you have 2 JUCO prospects that would excite any fan base in the nation. This is a class that could be a difference maker for the Crimson Tide once they get on campus, and it's Kalen DeBoer's first true class. What he was able to do when he got to Alabama in terms of retaining this roster was already noteworthy, and that's something I don't think we talk enough about. When Nick Saban retired, we saw such an exodus from Alabama, and that's the current state of college football. But Kalen DeBoer held the majority of this roster together. And on top of that, he held the 2024 recruiting class together. A lot of those guys currently contributing and making plays right now. But whenever you're talking about recruiting, one of the things that I think works to Alabama's advantage right now is guys across the nation who are in the 25, 26, and even 27 cycle are watching Alabama play football and seeing true freshmen make an impact. And I think that that's a great recruiting chip that Alabama currently has. Being able to tell these guys, listen, if you come in here, you work and you prove it, you will contribute as a true freshman. Even though we have talented guys, we've seen on the defensive side so much rotation, especially in that secondary and up front. That's a recruiting chip for these guys. Being able to convince them, hey, yeah, we have a lot of talent here. You prove yourself, you'll see the field. So I have been incredibly impressed with what Kalen DeBoer and this staff have been able to do on the recruiting trail because this class is awesome. And I'm really excited to see how they continue progressing through their senior years, who will early enroll, and all of that. But that gets us into the next topic. And that's that Alabama is in pursuit of multiple flips. And we've talked about several of them, but today we need to turn our attention to a wide receiver currently committed to a different SEC program, and that's Florida and Montgomery. Because not long ago, On3Recruits announced on Twitter that Montgomery had 3 official visits on the docket that he planned to go to. He planned to go to Washington, Ole Miss, and Alabama, and the Bama visit is November 16th. Now, Nashawn Montgomery is an incredibly gifted prospect. In fact, if we look at the 24/7 Sports Composite, he comes in at number 180 in the nation, regardless of position, the number 21 wide receiver, and the number 28 player in the state of Florida. And Alabama has had success with wide receivers from the state of Florida. In fact, wide receivers from the state of Florida usually do pretty darn good. And when I watched Nashawn Montgomery, there are several things that stood out to me. First and foremost, even though 24/7 Sports has him listed as 6'1", 165, he plays well above that weight. What I mean is he is a willing and eager blocker. And that's something that's the difference whenever you're making the jump from high school to college. Listen, there are a lot of talented wide receivers out there who have the skills to make the jump from high school to college and contribute early. But one thing typically holds them back, and that's blocking. Because when you get to college, you're going to be asked to block at a higher rate, and you must be efficient at it. And Montgomery not only is efficient, he takes pride in blocking. He's not out there just trying to simply do the job. He's out there trying to bury guys. He is constantly trying to take his guy out the play and does so successfully at a very impressive rate. Outside of that, whenever we actually talk about wide receiver skills, he's incredibly impressive. He is a long strided sprinter, and so I think defensive backs get confused when he starts running at how fast he is. But make no mistake, when you watch him start separating from everybody, there's no denying his top end speed. This is a guy that they ask to do a lot in the offense, whether that's short passes, trying to take them the distance, trying to take the top off the defense, or as I already previewed, his blocking ability, getting everybody else involved and allowing them to eat. It's that type of unselfish behavior and the way he takes pride in that unselfish behavior that makes him an interesting target for any college out there. And it makes complete sense why Florida is going to be working so hard to keep him in this class. It also makes sense why Alabama looks at a guy like this and says, we'd love to have you a part of our class. Because if Alabama could finish this cycle out with the three wide receivers of Caleb Cunningham, Lotzier Brooks, and Montgomery, that'd be a great haul. With all of the abilities Montgomery brings to the table, I think this is a guy you need to know about. But speaking of wide receivers in Alabama, a wide receiver currently committed to the Tide has made national headlines this week based off of a visit he just took to Ole Miss. And of course, we're talking Caleb Cunningham. Top 20 player in the nation per the 24/7 Sports Composite, coming in as the number 16 player nationally, regardless of position, the number 2 wide receiver, and certainly a top player in the state of Mississippi. Ole Miss has always been a school that, in my opinion, you had to watch because it's the home school. And for some guys, being able to play in front of that home crowd, that means something. And I think that's cool. But for me, Caleb Cunningham is a really intriguing prospect. Not even just talking about the physical abilities he brings to the table. We've talked about that time and time again. But this is a guy that has been open and honest about the process. He has not shied away from the fact that, hey, I am committed to Alabama. There's nothing that you need to worry about, but I do want to enjoy my time. You only go through this recruiting process once. If I have an opportunity to go see a game at this location or this location, I'd like to take it. And personally, I don't have an issue with it. You only experience this once. Enjoy it. But the visit to Ole Miss apparently was very successful for Ole Miss, and multiple articles have been written about it, forcing us to ask the question, is he on flip watch? Personally, I don't necessarily know that I have the answer, but what I will say, something that we talked about way back when as it relates to Caleb Cunningham, after every visit he's taken, he has spoken incredibly highly about that visit, meaning he's enjoying his process. Is this any different? I don't believe so. And one thing that I think bodes well for Alabama is that he is scheduled to take a visit to the Tide whenever Alabama plays Auburn in the Iron Bowl, and that is an incredibly infectious environment and easily could sew this thing up for Alabama. One other thing I'd like to talk about as it relates to Caleb Cunningham is that he was in attendance for the Georgia game. And if there was ever a game to witness this year, it was probably Alabama-Georgia, watching how that offense operates. Look, let's be very honest here. Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, they're going to attract offensive players, especially skill position guys. That makes complete sense to me. But as is Alabama. And the one thing Alabama has in their class right now that to me puts them over the edge of an Ole Miss, all due respect to Ole Miss, is they have a 5-star quarterback in the class. Whenever you're asking, hey, what's the future of the position that's going to be throwing me the ball, Alabama can point to a guy that's a 5-star player that has back-to-back state championship rings at Duncanville in Texas, which is one of the most difficult high school leagues in the nation, and could be well on his way to three-peating. Key Russ is that guy, won Elite 11 MVP, took home MVPs of multiple other camps, and has already set the nation on fire his senior year with his performance in the toughest division of Texas high school football. That, in my opinion, is something that we cannot overlook. Ole Miss recruits well. They currently have a top 25 recruiting class, but they don't have the ability currently to point to a quarterback in that recruiting class and say, hey, we have a 5-star quarterback in the class. Alabama does. And in my opinion, that's going to give Alabama the edge. The fact that they already have the relationship, everybody else is playing catch up, the fact that he is scheduled to take more visits to Alabama, and the fact that Alabama already has a 5-star quarterback, in the class, I think that all bodes well for the Tide. Not to mention, Coach Shepard is infectious, and I think every wide receiver in the nation that talks to him is blown away by the type of person he is and would love to get coached by him. I think Alabama is going to be able to hold on to the incredibly talented 5-star wide receiver, only strengthening this class by being able to show everybody out there, you can try and flip players from our class and you might be successful, but it's not going to be a walk in the park. But I can't wait to hear from all of you. Hop down to the comments, let me know what you're thinking. Do you believe Alabama will be able to get some key flips their direction? We've talked about several players already, but today we added another name to the list in Montgomery. What are you thinking about that? Do you believe that Ole Miss will be able to flip Caleb Cunningham? And let me know what you're thinking about Kalen DeBoer's inaugural recruiting class with the Tide. I can't wait to hear from you. That's it. See ya.